I'm Giovanna, the Marketing Executive at CalMac Group Academy. The CalMac Group is a certified center of excellence for learning, training leaders at all levels, and in all schemes of quality, compliance, and conformity. This is the first of a new series of webinars about compliance, assurance, and innovation. We have here Gerard Kelly. He's our CEO and founder of the CalMac Group. He's joining us from Limerick in Ireland. And we also have Doreen Lugalia, our principal EMEA consultant from Kenya. She's specialized in QMS and she helps clients with certification, profitability, and competition. In this webinar, you'll learn about the Golden Triangle and align your company's business and quality goals, boosting profits, and staying competitive. Before we start, Alan is our producer, and he will manage the polls during the webinar. If you face any tech issues, raise your hand and Alan will help. Please stay on mute during the webinar, and if you have any questions, share them in the chat. We'll address them in the last 15 minutes or follow up later. So let's begin.
Good morning all, and welcome to the QMS Golden Triangle webinar. Alan, if you move the slide on, please, and we look at the agenda for this morning. In this webinar, we'll talk about what is the Golden Triangle. We will take a look at what does the requirements of a typical QMS 9001 say in this regard. We'll take a look at the business case. Obviously, the challenge for most organizations is aligning people, goal, and risk management governance within their QMS. We'll also take a look at the relationship between the Golden Triangle and the PDCA cycle. There's a number of tools, techniques that some of you are more likely aware of. We will also have a free template for goal alignment, and Giovanna will talk about that at the end. And then we will take a look at how it actually works in action, and then we'll have some questions and answers, if any. Yeah? Okay, Alan, we can move on to the next slide, please. Okay, so what is the Golden Triangle? It is a quality concept, and it describes really how an organization aligns its vision, its plan, and the plan can be based on the organizational unit. So it can be a business plan. If it's a manufacturing facility, it can be an operational plan, and specifically the organization's goals, business goals. It also aligns the QMS with the vision and the organization's plan and goals, as well as risk management. In short, it outlines how goal alignment is achieved and maintained within an organization, either as a group of companies, a unit level, or a sub-unit level. Yes, Alan, please move on. Next slide. Yes, so now we have a poll here just to see what your ideas are on the objective of the Golden Triangle. You have a choice of 4 here, and Alan will activate the poll, and we ask you to just basically select whichever answer you think is appropriate. Okay, you can probably see there's a number of different choices here, but the reality is that it's if you're to achieve the perfect alignment, it's all of those. Clearly, the majority of people went for B, goal alignment between the organization and the QMS, and that's the primary objective of the Golden Triangle. We would maintain that it's also important to have people alignment and also to have risk management alignment, not just goal alignment. And we'll talk about that in the next few slides. Okay, Alan, thanks for that, and we move on. Okay, what I'm trying to convey in this slide is what are the typical problems that we would see. Again, some of these problems may not affect your organization. They're generic. They're not intended to represent any one organization. The first one is basically where the organization's goals strategically are not aligned with the QMS goals. Basically, the top management, executive leadership, board, depending on the legal structure of the entity, they have their own business goals. It's not aligned with the QMS objectives. Very often when I audit on behalf of a certification body and I ask the question, what are the top 3 problems that there are challenges that are being faced by the organization? Top management are very quick to outline what the objectives are. And then I say, okay, now let's take a look at the QMS objectives. And very often what I find is that the QMS objectives are not aligned, not even connected with the organization or the business goals and objectives. For some organizations, ISO is seen as a requirement by management. Very often employees, they perceive that ISO certification really is for management. They don't see what's in it for them and how the ISO certification or the QMS basically impacts them and benefits them in terms of their daily, weekly, monthly objectives. Number 3, in a lot of cases, we find that the QMS goals basically are intangible. Very often they're perceived by top management as offering little or no organizational value. Typical objectives goals here would be achieve ISO certification, maintain ISO certification, have 0 customer complaints would be typical examples. A lot of QMSs don't have product and process goals. Obviously, a QMS is a combination of processes that interact with each other. Not every organization has their processes mapped. They don't have process goals. Marketing-wise, most organizations would have product goals, but again, not aligned with very often with the QMS. And as regards risk management, typical problems we sometimes see is that risk management at a strategic board, top management level, they have their own risk register. Very often it's not aligned with the QMS. When we look at the QMS risk assessment, the challenge that most organizations face is what's the frequency that we should review the relevance of our risks? And hence, very often we find that risk management at a QMS level is static. It may be disjointed, and it may not be focused or aligned with the organization's strategic risk management. In some cases, there isn't an escalation route between operational risk at a product process level and strategic or risk register as an organization level. Doreen, would you like to take over next? And we can go to the next slide.
Thank you. Yes, so as Gerard mentioned, we're looking at QMS, and we want to see the QMS requirements and how they are related to the Golden Triangle. So if you see from the slide, you will notice that literally every clause of the Quality Management System Standard ISO 9001 2015 has a relationship to the Golden Triangle. So if we start off, when we look at the context of the organization, that in clauses 4.1 and 4.2, that specifically requires that the organization looks at quality in, puts its context within the business and looks at external and internal factors that would affect the quality management system. Then when we look at the process approach, again, this is in line with PDCA cycle, the plan, do, check, and act cycle, which we will see as a consistent theme as we go along this webinar. The process approach whereby you expect your inputs, whatever your inputs are, whatever you do as an organization, and what your outputs, what results you expect, that's in clause 4.4. Leadership is also very, very key because leaders define what the vision, the mission, and the goals of the organization are. That is within clause 5.1. And important, an area that we normally overlook when we're implementing a quality management system, and this has come out very, very strongly, are the risks and opportunities, which are in clause 6.1. Now, as you normally go through your business, you tend to look at risks that will directly impact sales, that will directly impact cash flow, and other factors, rather than incorporating the risks related to delivering quality to your consumer or customer. And in clause 6.2, we look at quality objectives and plans to achieve them. Gerard earlier mentioned about our quality objectives integrated into the business objectives. Very big question. And we will see what the Golden Triangle expects us to do with respect to quality objectives and integrating them into business objectives. The only thing constant about business and life in general is change. How do you manage change? That is captured in clause 6.3, and that also has a very, very important bearing on the Golden Triangle. When we look at the actual gist of planning your operations and controlling your operations, ensuring that your product meets what you have planned for it and the requirements of the customer, that comes up in clause 8.1. And when you look at the requirements for products and services, again, that is in clause 8.2, which is the do section of the PDCA cycle, right? Before you release your products, what controls, what checks do you have in place? A very, very huge bearing within the Golden Triangle, and that's in clause 8.6, all right? So then now we go into the check aspect of the quality management system requirements. That's in clause 9.1, where you're looking at monitoring. How do you monitor your processes? How do you measure? How do you analyze and how do you evaluate that product in line with the plans that were initially there? Okay, that's in clause 9.1. Then, as a management team, as a leadership team, how do you review that your system is actually meeting the requirements, right? That's in clause 9.3. Then act, which is improvement, that's in clause 10, because the gist of having a quality management system is to ensure that you always improve. You can always be better than you are. And that whole cycle then shows us that the Golden Triangle is very, very integral into our entire quality management system requirements and translating them into the business. Next slide, please. So when we look at people alignment, people are the essence of the business. When we're looking at the Golden Triangle, we want to ensure that everybody in the business understands what your vision is, right? People have to be engaged right up to the operator level to understand what it is they need to ensure to be able to meet the requirements of the QMS, right? So people must be meaningfully engaged throughout the organization. How do you drive that? the organization culture, their behavior, their competence, and their knowledge management as an organization. So all this has to be driven by the leadership to ensure that the organization is fully aligned as far as people are concerned. Okay, what is a control measure there? We have to look at the goal alignment. Are those goals that have been set by leadership, can they be translated to each and every individual in the organization? Whether we're looking at cost containment, whether you're looking at financial objectives, right? Whether you're looking at product quality objectives, right? What does that mean to the person at the end of the process line? That has to be done. And what is the measure for that? There will be predictable and sustainable organization success. That means that everybody in the organization is driving towards the same objectives, and that departments are not pulling against each other, but they're pulling in one direction with respect to the organization's objectives. Next slide, please. Now, when you look at the actual goal, you've now engaged the people, and then you have the goal. So this goal has to be between the vision, the actual plan, and the QMS and the product or service processes. Now, the vision is very far-reaching. The mission is what happens within your 1 year timeline. And what drives this? Obviously, it's what the organization and stakeholder needs, right? What are their needs? What does the organization want to achieve in the next one year, in the next 2 years, in the next 3 years, etc.? Obviously, it has to be aligned with what the broader picture is. Because as you move along in the organization, you need to ensure that you're actually achieving what you expect to achieve. So in other words, we're looking at the goal alignment. How are those goals really aligned together with your vision, your plan, and your product, your QMS and your product, service, and processes, okay? And remember here, we're looking at both a product and a service. The quality management system is actually generic, and it applies to a service industry or a product industry. So what is the measure there? Predictable and sustainable organization success, because your goals have been aligned, right? And you know what your organization and what your stakeholder requirements are. And remember, stakeholders are all the people who have a stake within the business. So if that happens together with the goal alignment, then you're able to get predictable and sustainable organization success. Gerard, you can take over now.
Okay, next slide, Alan, please. Governance and risk management. In the 2015 version of the standard, risk-based thinking was introduced for the first time in a formal sense. It was previously organizations in truth knew much about it, let alone follow that practice. Governance is a term associated with how strategically a board and the executive management team manage risk strategically. Yeah. The challenge that all organizations have is achieving alignment between governance in an organization and risk management in the QMS. And that means, what are the risks to the product along the product life cycle, from creation to end of life of the product, and that includes supply, as well as process risk. The driver here is trust and reputation. Trust and reputation is hard earned. It's very easily lost. And obviously, Risk management is about mitigating and preventing anything that would cause a lack of trust or a lack of branding, loyalty from customers and consumers. Again, the mechanism, the framework for achieving this is goal alignment. If everyone is working and pulling in the same direction, as Doreen indicated, that's the framework within organizations. It's not just, you can achieve it as well with financial control. Whether you decide to have objectives or goals at an organization level, at a division level, at a departmental or facility level, that's your choice. You've got that agility, flexibility within your QMS, and that's a decision that each organization will take for itself. Again, the overdriving measure of success, as you like, is the organization's success. Yeah? And achieving that in a sustainable way, year in, year out, quarter in, quarter out. And again, no one wants nasty surprises, so it's predictable. Okay, Alan, next slide, please. Doreen outlined the plan, do, check, and act cycle again. It's a very important concept within a QMS. As an organization, every organization has a vision of where it would like to be over a 3 to 5 year period. Every organization has a plan. Every organization sets goals for itself, and that's reflected in ISO 9001. The doing part of the PDCA here is where we strategically and operationally plan and control our organization. Clearly, there's a very distinct role and responsibility of management. And management here isn't just top management, it's middle management and supervisors, team leads. A manager is any person managing people. Obviously, ISO has a preference for quantitative measures, and obviously each organization sets its own measurements. The monitoring frequency has to be adjusted based on performance. Every organization should analyze, see what it's doing well, where things didn't work out as planned. Lessons need to be learned. And what's critical there is the evaluation, the decisions that we take to ensure that if things didn't work out like we wanted, then how do we recover? If things worked out as we planned or better than what we planned, why was that the case? Well, what did we do really well? A key part of ISO 9000 then is going to be into the improvement clause 10 section. A lot of organizations take a narrow view of this, but I'd like to remind everyone that 9001 promotes innovation, promotes benchmarking, either with competitors or other industry players that you can learn from. And clearly, it's in everyone's interest that the organization year on year can basically show improvement, not least of which when customers are happy with the product and service that you've provided, their requirements subtly change and they have new or evolving requirements. Hence, anyone who has an effective QMS also needs to buy into this principle. Alan, next slide, please. Now, before I come on to this next slide, Doreen outlined earlier on the requirements of the QMS. As part of the process approach, we have to adopt systems thinking. In other words, we have to not always look at silos or individual products or processes, we'll need to look at the sequence and interaction. And what the golden triangle does is it's not an explicit requirement, but it's an implicit requirement. And if you really want to have an effective QMS, you have to look at and you have to build into the design of your QMS the sequence and interaction. And the goal alignment of aim of the golden triangle is what does that for us. Now, as you know, there are various tools and techniques that one can use. Most organizations have defined their vision, their mission, and values. That's good. They're not explicit requirements of ISO 9001, but it makes sense that basically everything we do is aligned with the organization's mission, vision, and values. Quality culture and behavior, very important. You'll see it in the next version of ISO 9001. Culture is becoming a hot topic, if you like, for quality professionals. Behavior is at individual level, culture is organization-wide, and some of you are lucky that your culture is suitable, effective, and adequate. Other organizations are not so lucky, and it's something that you need to work at to get the maximum benefit from engagement you have with managers and people throughout the organization. Goal alignment is the primary aim of basically the golden triangle. And, you know, when organizations are going through a turbulent or difficult time, very often we see competition between different divisions, different facilities, locations within a larger group, or competing interests between finance, operations, marketing and sales, production. When the reality is we should be just focused on the customer and the consumer. Yeah. Governance and risk management are here to stay. Increasingly, we have seen where governance fails. Obviously, in an Irish context, the troubles that RTE, the national broadcaster, has had, you can see the damage organization-wise to an organization that most Irish people would relate to. But in recent times, sadly, trust has become a big issue with the public. And clearly, if there was effective risk management in place, one would argue that the difficulties, the challenges that RTE are facing at the moment were preventable. And indeed, hence, risk management is really not a new technique in ISO. It was called preventive action before, but it's a good transition now. Risk management needs to be in place because we have vulnerabilities in any organization at a business level, at a people level, at a product level, and a process level. And it's like a recipe. We need to look at the systems and the integrated approach. Clearly, with the current times, we've had a difficult time with COVID-19 in recent years. Now we're hit with high energy costs, etc. And if an organization isn't really innovative and creative today, personally, I'd like to see Clause 10 of ISO expanded further. It's audited so today by the certification bodies, very often seen as an afterthought. But for organizations, we have to reinvent ourselves periodically. It's better if it comes from within. The organizations who manage innovation the better than others tend to do quite well. Yeah. So there's a very clear connection between organizational success and innovation and creativity. Now, what Doreen indicated there is under 4142, you have to outline your SWOT, your PESTEL, your Porter 5 forces. You have flexibility with regard to what you perceive your strengths, your vulnerabilities, your opportunities, and hopefully you're not facing a really turbulent time like RTE, as I say right now. But there has to be a connection between the context of your organization, your vision, your mission, your values, your goals, because if an organization is not successful financially and customer-wise, it's going to lead to other challenges internally. Yeah, particularly with the cost of living right now, employees have an expectation with the rising costs that basically they will benefit as well. So there has to be alignment. The output from the context of the organization is an input into the organization's goals, priorities, and there has to be prioritization and focus. We don't want division. We don't want disjointed goals and objectives. Everyone must understand the big picture and contribute to the overall success. And then hopefully we all benefit. The people alignment is critical as well. Very often I find that, you know, it's interesting, employees sometimes criticize top management. Top management say, well, they struggle sometimes to get accountability from employees, loyalty, so there sometimes can be a disjointed culture within the organization. But I have found that it's middle management, in my personal experience, is the biggest challenge. Generally, top management, I'm not saying they're perfect, but they do a relatively good job at setting the vision, the mission, and the plan for the organization. Obviously, with planning, yeah, some executive teams, boards are maybe overly optimistic with their plans a little bit, but I wouldn't criticize them for being ambitious. It would be worse if they didn't have a vision and a mission and didn't set, if you like, ambitious goals. But it's trying to get middle management, basically, because employees within an organization, they're largely managed by middle management. And very often there's a disconnect between middle management and top management, the executive and the board. And clearly that's in no organization's interest. So there must be people alignment there. And obviously risk management, governance helps us. Things do go wrong. Sometimes unforeseen events happen externally. Most cases I find that change is happening from within, not always very managed very well. So risk is, like Doreen says, with change, it goes hand in hand. We have to anticipate risks. Everyone wants the same goal, success. So we have a tool for you that you can use to do with goal alignment. There'll be instructions with it after the webinar, and Giovanna will tell you there. So there's various tools and techniques. We're making the tool available to you. Generally, most organizations fulfill the requirements of the standard, but what we find is the golden triangle, the alignment, the sequence and interaction is the if you like, the missing piece of the jigsaw for a lot of organizations. And hence, we are making available free for anyone who wants it, this tool to bring alignment, bring focus, and get everyone working in the same direction. Alan, please, next slide. Okay, we have a second poll here, which is just your views on what you perceive as the top issues associated within your own organization or previous organizations that basically you have been associated with. We're not asking you to breach any confidence, but we're asking you, how well are you managing one or all of these issues? Okay, you can see there it's interesting. C, organizational leadership, employee engagement are not always effective, and that's to do with culture and that's to do with behavior. And as I say, you're going to see in the next revision of all quality standards, not just 9001, culture is going to become a big issue. Really in the standard and a new feature as it's evolved. Number 2 there, you can see governance risk, for some organizations. Everyone does it. Not everyone has it, does it systematically, but everyone does risk management. I've never seen an organization that doesn't manage risk. They may not use a defined methodology. It may not be aligned and documented, but clearly it's a requirement now of the standard. And the golden triangle will help with that, because everyone wants ultimately success. Employees want success, managers want success, because once success happens, opportunities occur. Yes, Alan, next slide, please. Thanks for that. So I guess now we can turn it over to any questions and answers you may have regarding the golden triangle. And we just put the image there on the slide there as an illustration visually of what we've really been talking about for the last number of minutes. Yeah? You can use chat if you have any questions, and then basically Alan will share it and we can discuss them. Hi, Jayton.
Yeah, hello. Actually, I have one question. As we see the risk management of ISO and the ICH guidelines for Q9, sorry, for the risk management, are they simultaneously used in any industry or company, or what's the thing with them?
Obviously, Q9 is more associated with the pharma industry.
Yeah, right.
Specifically. For medical device, it would be another protocol, but they're similar concepts. It would be ISO 14971. And for 9001 and most other industries, it would be ISO 31000. Yeah, they are the reference standards for risk management. Again, all of those protocols, reference standards are, if you like, best practices, and they're aimed to provide guidance on how to implement those best practices within the different industry sectors. But you're correct, Jayton, there are differences in approach, emphasis between the different industries. But clearly in recent years, corporate governance has become a buzzword. You have academia now running courses on governance for executives and boards of directors. Obviously, quality professionals, information security professionals, it's not just confined to just quality. It would be in food as well, aerospace, nuclear, all of those industries all do risk management. Yeah, the protocol may be have a different label. But the principle, the practices are the same. Yeah. The key with risk is some of the larger organizations will even have a senior professional coordinating risk management throughout the organization. That's one approach. Smaller companies, that normally falls into line management, and if you have 9001, obviously risks and opportunities 6.1 and ISO 31000 would normally be the framework or protocol that you can use, yeah, as a guidance. Yeah, there's no magic answer here, but they're all similar. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Deirdre, Nick, any comments?
No, for the most part, Jared, you kind of answered the main point I would make, which is that for smaller businesses, it's the line manager that really is involved at the cold face of risk. Really, the upper management need to understand how the risks as they appear are monitored, managed, and moved forward, how actions are applied, and then ensure that the action has the outcome that is necessary. But yeah, for the most part, the hardest part for our business is trying to get that alignment and understanding. Like, our line managers are very pro ISO 9001. They've been trained by yourselves in understanding of it, and then they've applied it in areas that are relevant to them. But I think it's the real difficulty we have is the day-to-day individuals within our laboratory and in our production team, getting them to understand why doing it the way we've organized it to be done ensures both quality but also simplifies their job, because it means that the output is known by controlling the inputs, quality is assured, the customer needs are met, and that you won't have to do a revision in 2 weeks' time because of you decided to go off on your own tangent. So it's really, that's the hardest part for us. I mean, the quality, what you talk about here is it's essentially the nuts and bolts of ISO 9001 and ensuring quality at the customer facing component of a company, which we're all very pro. I don't think there's ever a business that doesn't think that that's a good idea. But it's nice to hear that we're going about it the right way. Because in my head, as you said, Jared, there's no one answer. So
No.
you kind of have to form the answer to your company. So
Yeah.
which is difficult. So I'm glad to hear you suggested that we're not at least going a terrible direction by deciding to try and get it into the line manager phase, because we've been having senior management do it, and you're so far away from the production line that really can you manage and monitor what happens on a day-to-day and how it's done. You know, we can receive inputs from our line managers that it is done that way. That's the best way, in my view. And if actions don't result in the outcome, you can turn around and say, well, what happened there? What anomaly occurred? What was the thing that should have happened that didn't happen? And you ask your line managers, and they go away and explore that. And then you have a corrective action from it, which we use a lot. I mean, corrective action is probably, maybe 10% of our current line managers' times.
Yeah. I guess the other challenge that's there as well is, or the worst problem you can have, in my view, is where middle management don't speak up. They're afraid to speak up. There has to be an escalation. If there's a risk at a product level in an organization or a risk at a process level, it's where middle management don't escalate to top management. Yeah. Because there could be what I call hot risks operationally that top management may not be aware of till it's rather late. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you want the culture that they're free to speak up, and they do speak up early, because the sooner we know and we admit that there's a challenge or an issue, it saves everyone time, frustration, money. That's ideally what we're trying to achieve here. Yeah.
Yeah. No, we've been particularly lucky with that. I mean, we've essentially all our middle management has been grown within our industry or within our business. Actually, we've hired them from a very young age. So we have been lucky with the culture side. We definitely live in a world where and that's, I guess, one insight that isn't reflected in ISO 9001, and because it's a document with guidance rather than a document understanding humans, it is that even upper management has to be accepting of criticism, of errors, and the second you are willing to say and put up your hand, you know what, that was my mistake, you'll suddenly see the rest of your team being willing to both accept risk to a certain extent, but also accept failure. And in accepting failure, understanding that there is a corrective action that could potentially ensure that failure doesn't occur in the future. So they don't fear failure. They're willing to step forward into the abyss, which is important because we're an R&D team, which means that, you know, we fund a lot of things that are going to fail. But yeah, you hit the nail on the head. And culture, it's great to see culture in 2015's version. It's a really critical and risk, being expanded in 2015 and risk being pushed a little bit more into 2015, because that's how we govern our business. It's literally a risk management system. Everything is about how do we mitigate risk. So yeah, I would say culture, it's very important to be able to accept your failings, and you do that from top down. You don't push your failings onto others. If someone makes a mistake, you know, that means you weren't there for them when they needed you potentially. And so there's often a case that top management will push it down into the bottom. I tend to drag it up. I tend to say, look, you know, maybe I should have been there on that meeting and that day. That kind of a reaction, it gives a little bit more support to your team.
Yeah, and all elements must work. I mean, executive must manage strategic risk, and strategic risk is different than operational risk. Yeah, there's challenges and opportunities. You know, they're limitless, basically, there, and it's how well we manage that. Deirdre, would you have any comment, or you can choose not to comment either?
No, nothing from me, Jerry.
Okay, fair enough. Yep. You know, so look, we appreciate your time. Thanks to Doreen and my team, obviously, for putting the webinar on. Obviously, we strive when we work with clients to achieve the optimum result for our clients, always, whether it's training, auditing, or consulting. We are pushing, obviously, both risk management, risk-based thinking, governance. We're pushing the process approach. Sometimes it's fewer now, but the people don't have processes, they have procedures, and don't understand the value of the processes. And culture and people engagement is absolutely critical today in any business. A lot of our clients are suffering from higher than they'd like, turnover of staff, difficult to get staff. So it's very important that basically we don't just look at these concepts in isolation. They have to be looked at from a systems perspective. It's a recipe, yeah? Being good at one of those will not necessarily guarantee success, yeah? And it's something that, like everything in life, you have to work at it, yeah? So I'd like to thank everyone for their time and coming to this webinar, yeah? And Giovanna, just want to wrap up?
Yeah, sure. Just want to thank you, Gerard and Doreen, for the webinar, Alan for all the help here. We'll be sharing all the webinar records and also the templates that Gerard mentioned earlier in the webinar with all of you via email. And if you have any questions or anything, feel free to contact us at any time. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah, we kept a recording basically of the webinar as well, and it'll be made available to you. It'll be published on the website. So if you have other colleagues who just weren't able to attend this morning's session, they'll have an opportunity to review it at their leisure. Yeah.
Thanks, Jerry. Thanks, folks.
Okay, thanks to everyone.